Hey everyone, Noir here. Let's get into today's Reddit story.
My name is Vanessa Collins, and I am 36 years old. I had been saving for this moment for 3 years. Not for vacations, not for new furniture, and not even for the kitchen remodel my husband Ethan kept suggesting. Every extra dollar I earned from my Army salary and my consulting work on the side went into a separate bank account labeled simply Mom and Dad. My parents would celebrate their 50th wedding anniversary that October, and they had spent nearly all those years living in the same cramped two-bedroom rental about 40 minutes from the coast. It was the same coastline my father used to take us to every summer when I was a child. He always parked half a mile away because we could never afford the beachfront parking, and we walked the rest of the distance just to spend an afternoon breathing the salty ocean air. My father, Harold, worked for 31 years at a freight yard. It was the kind of job that wears down a man's knees and tests his patience every day. But it never made him bitter. My mother, Diane, raised me and my brother, and for 4 years she also cared for my grandmother, all while living in that same little house. She stretched every grocery budget as far as it could go and never complained where any of us could hear. They gave everything they had to us. During 50 years together, they never spent money on anything extravagant for themselves. So when I found a listing 8 months earlier for a 4-bedroom house with a wraparound porch, just 200 feet from the shoreline, priced at $425,000, I did not hesitate. I emptied the savings account, borrowed against my pension contributions, and bought the house without telling anyone except my brother, who helped me organize everything from 3 states away. The plan was simple. Their 50th anniversary landed on a Saturday. I took leave from my post, flew in 2 days early, and arranged for my parents to visit the house under the excuse that I wanted them to look at a property for a friend. I hired a small catering company, hung string lights across the porch, and filled the dining room with photographs covering 50 years of their marriage. Ethan arrived on a separate flight to help me finish everything because his unit had given him a long weekend. His parents, Patricia and Harold Holloway, offered to take care of the decorations while I went to pick up my parents from the airport hotel where they were staying. Looking back, that should have been my first warning. Before I go any further, I need to explain something. I have never had an easy relationship with my mother-in-law. Patricia Bennett has a way of giving you a compliment that somehow feels like an insult. Over the years, she made comments about Ethan marrying beneath his potential, about my Army career keeping me away from home too much to build a proper household, and about how my parents, as she liked to put it, did not exactly come from an impressive background. I put up with those remarks for 6 years because Ethan always promised he would talk to her. Besides, I honestly believed that buying my own parents a house with my own money had nothing to do with the Holloways. I could not have been more wrong. That Saturday afternoon, I picked up my parents. My mother was wearing her favorite blue dress, and my father had on the same suit he wore to my brother's wedding 12 years earlier. Both of them believed they were simply coming to look at a possible investment property. The drive to the coast took about 40 minutes. The entire way, my mother held my hand from the back seat, asking about the house and the neighborhood, completely unaware that in just a few minutes she would be standing inside her own home. The moment we pulled into the driveway, I knew something was wrong. The string lights I had hung 2 days before were gone. The porch, which should have been decorated with welcome banners and the framed photo display I had spent a week putting together, was empty except for a folding table covered with serving dishes that were not part of my catering order. Standing in the open doorway, holding the doorframe as though she owned the place, was Patricia. My mother stepped out of the car first, smiling because she still believed this was only a house tour. She had taken just 3 steps toward the porch when Patricia came down the stairs, pointed toward the street, and shouted loudly enough for the neighbors 2 houses away to hear. "This is our house! Get out!" My mother stopped where she was. My father, who had never raised his voice in his life, began trembling. He reached for my mother's shoulder as though he wanted to protect her from something he did not understand. My mother's eyes filled with tears at once. Confusion and humiliation hit her together, and both emotions were written across her face. As far as my mother knew, she had just been shouted off the porch of a stranger's house in front of her own daughter. Behind Patricia, I noticed my father-in-law, Harold, standing stiffly near the doorway. Farther inside, I could see people moving around what was supposed to be my parents' new dining room. There was furniture that did not belong to me, boxes I had never seen before, and an entire household being unpacked inside a home that had only ever been meant for the two people now standing outside, shocked and humiliated. I still had not said a word. I was standing beside the car with my keys in my hand, watching my mother's hands tremble and seeing my father's jaw clench, the way it had only once before, on the day he buried his own father. Then I walked toward the house. The moment my footsteps reached the porch, everything went quiet. Patricia turned to face me, and before she managed to put on her usual expression, I caught a brief look that confirmed every suspicion I had tried to ignore for years. She did not look surprised. She looked like someone who had been caught in the middle of doing something, not someone who had just made an unexpected discovery. "Vanessa," she said, smoothing the front of her blouse as though she were about to welcome guests into her own home instead of standing in the middle of the scene she had created. "This isn't what it looks like." "Then tell me exactly what it does look like," I replied calmly. I kept my voice even, the same way I spoke to soldiers under my command when they needed to understand that excuses never changed the outcome. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you just screamed at my mother while she was standing on the porch of a house she'd never even seen before." My father-in-law stepped into the doorway behind her. For the first time since I had known him, he looked like a man who wished the ground would swallow him whole. He never said a word. His hands stayed buried in his pockets while he stared somewhere past me, unable to meet my eyes. Patricia recovered almost immediately, just as she always did. "Harold and Ethan's father talked about this house weeks ago," she said, waving a hand toward the inside as if that somehow explained everything. "Considering where it is, and everything Ethan has said over the years about eventually wanting a place near the water, we assumed this was going to be an investment for the whole family. We were only moving a few things in so we could help get it ready." I let her words hang there for a few seconds. I wanted everyone standing there, especially my parents, to hear exactly how ridiculous they sounded. "So, you assumed that a house I bought with my own money, a house I never once discussed with you, somehow gave you permission to move your furniture into it?" "Ethan didn't say anything," a voice said from behind me. I turned and saw my husband walking up the driveway. He had just parked the second vehicle carrying the last of the catering supplies. The color drained from his face. His eyes moved from his mother to the unfamiliar boxes stacked inside the front door, and finally to my mother, who was still standing silently on the walkway with tears running down her face while my father held her close. "Ethan, sweetheart, we were only trying to help," Patricia began. He raised one hand, stopping her before she could continue. In that moment, I saw something change in him that I had waited 6 years to see. "Mom," he said, "whose name is on the deed?" She did not answer. He asked again, "Whose name is on the deed?" After a long pause, she answered much more quietly, "Vanessa's." "Then this isn't a family investment," he said. "It's my wife's gift to her parents. You had absolutely no right to move even one box into this house, let alone scream at her mother on the front porch." Then he turned toward his father. "Dad, did you know about this?" Harold lowered his head and gave a slow nod. That single nod told me everything. This had not been a misunderstanding or a spur-of-the-moment mistake. They had planned this over the course of weeks. They had simply assumed that because Ethan and I were married, anything I earned, bought, or built would eventually belong to the Holloway family. The truth was, this had never really been about the house. It was about a pattern. Ever since the day Ethan introduced me to his parents, Patricia had been trying to establish the same pattern. She constantly treated my parents as though they were somehow beneath her family. For 6 years, she had chipped away at them with quiet insults and little acts of disrespect. This time, she had gone even further. She had tried to push my parents out of a home that already legally belonged to them. Without saying another word, I walked past Patricia and into the house. One box at a time, I carried every item that did not belong there back outside onto the porch. No one tried to stop me. Ethan silently joined me. He carried out a lamp that was not mine, a box of dishes that did not belong in the house, and 2 folding chairs that had replaced the tables my catering company had delivered. A few moments later, his father quietly started helping us load everything back into their vehicle. His face was tight with embarrassment, and for the first time, it looked completely genuine. Patricia remained on the porch, watching her own son carry her belongings out of the house she had tried to claim as her own. When she finally spoke again, all the confidence she had earlier was gone from her voice. I only wanted to make sure our family had something secure for the future. It was never your future to plan, I said. This house was a gift from a daughter to her parents in honor of 50 years of marriage. None of us has the right to take credit for what they built. They left about 20 minutes later. The silence that followed was nothing like the silence that had settled over the driveway when I first walked up. This silence felt different. My mother was still shaking, but my father had stopped trembling. As the last car pulled away, I watched the tension slowly leave his shoulders. We spent the rest of the evening doing exactly what I had planned from the beginning. I rehung the string lights myself. Ethan helped me straighten the photo collage that had been knocked crooked during the chaos. By the time the sun was setting, my parents were sitting on their own porch, just 200 feet from the shoreline they had spent years driving to every summer, only to enjoy it for a single afternoon. Now, they were finally home. My mother cried again that night, but this time those tears came from relief instead of fear. My father stood at the porch railing for a long time, quietly looking out at the water. He did not say much, because that has always been the way he processes the moments that matter most. After 50 years of sacrifice, they finally had something that was truly theirs, and no one would ever take it away from them again. If this story touched you, subscribe to the channel. Stories like this about family, betrayal, and the people who finally stand up for the ones who raised them are exactly why this channel exists. You will not want to miss the next one.